Go ahead. Great. So today we are presenting or discussing what's called Voices and Choices, Parenting Skills to Empower Kids and Promote Self-Advocacy. Here we go. Today we have two people from Children's Specialized Hospital, Elizabeth Marcketta and myself. I am the Interim Autism Program Coordinator here at Children's Specialized Hospital. And Elizabeth, just why don't you give a shout out and a hi and introduce yourself real quick?
Sure, thank you. Hi, thank you all so much for joining us today. So I'm a member of the family faculty team here at Children's. I'm also a member of the Family Advisory Council, and I am raising two kids who have specialized healthcare needs.
Great. And we also today have a third person from Children's Specialized on the side there, Linda Waddell. Why don't you give a little hi, Linda, because you're here joining us today as well.
Hi, thanks for joining us today, and I will be in charge of the chat. So if you have any questions that you want to put into it, I will let our team know.
Thank you. All right, so I wanted to share a little bit about Children's Specialized Hospital. We're the nation's leading provider of inpatient and outpatient care for children from birth to 21 years of age, facing special health challenges, from chronic illnesses and complex physical disabilities to a full scope of developmental, behavioral, and mental concerns. Our philosophy of partnering with every child and family is made possible by the Family Centered Care Department, which is comprised of employees who are parents and family members of children who have received or are still receiving services at Children's Specialized. We have about 15 different New Jersey locations, and including one state-of-the-art inpatient facility in New Brunswick and numerous outpatient facilities covering an array of programs and services, and a long-term care facility which provides exceptional care for children with complex medical conditions who cannot be cared for at home. So now it's time for a little introduction. I'm going to start with Elizabeth, but the whole premise for today's discussion is about empowering our kids and helping them be not only who they want to be, but also have a choice and a voice, really making a difference um, in how we typically speak for our kids or others speak for them. We want our kids to be able to be empowered and be able to make choices and have a voice. So, Elizabeth, why don't you start with a little, introduction about you?
Sure. So you can see my family right here. Tommy is 16 years old and Ella is 11 years old. They both do come to the hospital for services, and I have their permission to share that Tommy is autistic and has ADHD, and Ella was a preemie and has some associated developmental delays. Um, when I think about teaching self-advocacy, uh, I realized that I sort of stumbled into it mostly because of my own insecurities. So when Tommy was younger, he'd come home from school and he would talk about, oh, well, so and so did this at school, and I need you to help me fix it. And I felt embarrassed isn't quite the right word, but I didn't feel secure enough to email the teacher all the time and say, Tommy said so and so did this, what can we do about it? So instead, I started emailing his teachers and saying, Tommy has something he needs to tell you. Can you please remind him to talk to you about it? That way, Tommy could explain in his own words what was going on, and it removed my perspective from the situation. And from there, it grew into him advocating more and more for himself, and we're really grateful. I'm at the point now where he's in high school, and when he has a problem, he will email his case manager and say, I need to see you. And it's amazing how quickly adults respond when kids are the ones to reach out for help. So but just know, anything I'm sharing with you today, these are things I had to learn the hard way, so I'm hoping to help you all a little bit in your journeys.
Here you'll see the screen, my son Marco. Marco, we're going to talk very much about the difference between Tommy, who Elizabeth just mentioned, and Marco, who he is unable to speak right? It does not mean he does not have a voice, but he's unable to speak. And so he will soon be 24 years of age, and I don't necessarily have the permission to speak for him. So I tend to speak about him, but I really am trying to be very careful about how I share that information. I do have two other children, so three in total. Here, Marco loves Elmo at 24. He doesn't use the bathroom on his own. He has other multiple, disabilities, so he's really not able to walk, so not talk, not walk, even assistance needing feeding. So those are some of the physical challenges, but he absolutely communicates, and we'll talk a little bit more about his voice that he shares as we go along in this discussion. So for the next couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, I'm actually going to be reading from the screen, but I think words have power, and we really want to define some terminology for you that really are worth really reflecting on and thinking about. And Elizabeth and I really spoke and thought about this and really thought it was important to share these definitions. So the first is what disability is. It's physical, mental, or sensory differences that affect how a person moves, thinks, communicates, learns, or interacts with the world around them, and may require support or adaptations to fully participate in everyday activities. Then we could talk about access and functional needs, and that does not mean a person has a disability, but they may need support. So those are supports that people might need to fully connect with others, use services, and move around because of things like physical, sensory, or language challenges, age, or needing extra support. Then we have two terms that you hopefully have heard. One is neurodiverse, and that's a natural variety in how people's brains work, including differences in thinking, learning, and processing, and organizing information. Neurodivergent are people whose brain functions differently than what people consider as typical. And I hate using the word normal, but what we typically um, feel or see, and this may affect how they think, learn, or interact with others and their environments. It may require different types of adaptations and supports. There's a difference between independence and interdependence. So independence is being able to do things on your own and make decisions on your own without needing the help of others, whereas interdependence is relying on each other for support, where we help one another while maintaining our own choices, abilities, and responsibilities. Adaptive skills, which is something I think is really important to mention. It's the everyday skills that people use to take care of themselves and to interact with each other. And that could be in personal care, communication, managing daily tasks. These skills help people live more independently, participate in their communities, and engage in meaningful work and volunteer efforts. Communication, and that's not speaking or not speaking, this is communicating, is the way people share information, thoughts, and feelings with others. This can include speaking, using gestures or sounds, writing, physical movements, using pictures, technology, communication devices or apps. It encompasses all methods that allow people to express themselves and connect with others. Then we often hear the high functioning, low functioning term, and we often feel that that is really not necessarily a positive or um, an accurate way, I should say, of really referring to people. So instead of using high and low functioning, it's probably more accurate and appropriate to describe the person's support needs. So they may need low, medium, or high levels of support based on their adaptive skills. This focuses on their needs rather than labeling their abilities. And then there's a term that we often use called executive functioning, and that's mental skills that we use to plan, organize, manage time, and complete tasks, whether for current tasks or long-term planning. These skills help us focus, remember details, and make decisions. Self-autonomy is the ability to make your own choices and have control over your own life. This means deciding what is best for yourself, including daily activities, personal goals, and how to get the support you need while respecting your rights and independence. And then self-advocacy is the ability to express, and this is again communication, not necessarily with words, but the ability to express a person's needs, rights, and preferences, and to make choices about their life. This includes what support is needed and communicating that to others to ensure access and opportunities. Okay, so why don't you take those definitions and why don't you begin our discussion, Elizabeth?
All right, thank you. We did just hear Adrienne talking about self-autonomy and self-advocacy. And I know that there may be some of us thinking, well, but my child can't do that. And so I do just want to challenge you as we move forward to try to think about independence not as the goal, but as a way of life. Independence really does mean making choices and being able to participate in decisions being made. So we need to toss out that they can't and instead ask ourselves, how can they? So nearly all individuals do have the ability to communicate. It might be through spoken words, it might be an AAC device that they're using, sign language, simple gestures. And our job as parents is to decode the message our kids are sending and respond to it. I personally found both speech and occupational therapy very helpful with this because I know for me, I'm a mom, I'm not a therapist. So I needed help understanding what my kids were telling me. And on the flip side, we also need to make sure that our kids are understanding what we're telling them. I spent a lot longer than I would really care to admit feeling frustrated with Ella because I would ask her to get ready for school and she would change her clothes, but she wouldn't brush her teeth or brush her hair or pack her backpack. And I finally realized I was using the phrase get dressed and I meant get ready for your day. And she didn't understand there was more to it than just changing her clothes. So I needed to be more mindful of the words I was using. And we sat down together and we wrote out what mommy meant when she said get dressed and all the different tools and that's now on the mirror over her dresser. So if I ever use that phrase, she knows what it means.
Now, in the same aspect of getting dressed, so my son who's not able to speak, right? This is recently. This was just only a couple weeks ago. I was in his room and he's pulling me with his arm over to his cabinet. And his cabinet has these little locks at the top to prevent him from getting in and taking out all his clothes, right? And he's pushing my hand up to the top to unlock his cabinet. And then he takes my arm and he pulls it down to open the door to the cabinet. And then he pulls my arm up to his favorite pajamas to pull him out. And okay, oh, he wants to get dressed to go to bed, right? And very clearly communicated his choice, his voice, right? Really communicated what that he wanted to get dressed. But then he takes me and he brings me over to the other side of the room where his diapers were, right? Open that cabinet, mom, right? And he forced me to kind of look in that area and I opened that cabinet again, leading to those diapers. So very clearly, he told me, I've gone to the bathroom. I need to get changed. Let's do it. Right. And without using a word, he really used his communication tool to have, to really be able to communicate to that. So just because a child or an adult even does not have necessarily the ability to speak does not mean that they don't have the ability to tell you what they want and how they want it.
All right. With the goal of independence, we do need our kids to learn how to do simple tasks. And as a mom, I know it's usually quicker and a lot less messy for me to just take care of what my kids need. But then what am I teaching them? If I'm always the one who's fetching their snacks or putting away their laundry, filling their water bottles, where and when do I draw that line? So I'd like to share a couple of examples. They're not from my family. They're other families that I know here from the hospital. So this one family was coming in and the mom shared that her child really, really wanted to be able to fill their own water bottle. This was a very young child. The parent didn't want them to because they would usually spill water on the floor, which would create a mess for the parent to clean up, but also a safety concern if someone slipped in the water. So instead of saying they can't fill their water bottle, what we needed in this situation was a solution that allows the child the independence that they want, but also addresses the concerns of the parent. So can the parent come up with a reminder for the child to check for spilled water? Maybe they could place a towel next to the water dispenser. Can we attach a picture of a roll of paper towels? to the dispenser and make sure that the child can physically reach where they are kept. Another example was a parent I was speaking to, and she wanted her tween to be able to do their own laundry, but she was really worried that the child wouldn't remember to check the lint trap before starting the dryer, which is another safety concern. So she felt like she was always having to check up on her child, and she needed a solution that eased her mind, but also reminded her child to check the lint trap. So, in the situation, what can we do? Can we put a note on the outside of the dryer? Can we write on the inside of the laundry basket? Did you check for lint? In both of these situations, any move that we make to empower our kids is a step towards independence.
I agree, and I'll share a story too. And this is about enabling versus empowering, right? So I was at a hospital with my son, and my son, again, he really doesn't have the ability to walk independently. And here we are carrying a very young Marco in our arms at the hospital. And I look over to the other side in the hospital, and there's a father with his young son who had very significant, even more so, I think, than my son, physical disabilities, and he kept on falling. And the father did not pick him up. And the father was empowering him to figure out ways for him to get up on his own, where I was enabling my son not to, right? And it really changed my perspective in kind of all aspects, whether that be communication or physical or other, is that what am I enabling versus what am I empowering, right? So that was, thank you for sharing that, Elizabeth.
Choices. So when we're teaching our kids how to problem solve, the first step really is to give them choices. And this is another one of those things that in the moment it's going to take more time than rather choosing for them, especially because as their parents, we usually can predict what choice they're going to make. But by allowing them to make choices, it will, in the long run, help them become better problem solvers. Now, I'm not suggesting that we let the children pick out our next sofa or have an opinion on what car we should be driving. I'm talking about very small decisions and situations where the decision itself doesn't matter. Would they like an apple or a banana for an afternoon snack? Or do they want to wear jeans or sweatpants to school tomorrow? The importance there really is in the choice, not in, I'm sorry, is not in the choice, but it's in the choosing.
That's excellent. Um, again, I'll emphasize with Marco that, I have no idea, because necessarily he has no words, whether, what food he wants to eat, right? At any particular day, or, what he wants to wear, whether he wants to go out or not. And when he was really young, we really tried very hard to find a communication device for him. And none seemed to work. And eventually here at Children's, we did find one. That was based on motor planning, and it started out with one word on this device, right? And it was his Elmo, right? Because that was really what was most important to him. And that grew, and right now, he doesn't use it for communication, a conversation to have with me, but he absolutely now has his choice. He tells me whether, what food he wants, instead of me just popping out, a bowl of cereal, or, a waffle, or whatever it might be. He tells me what he wants. And that really fills my heart very much, that that choice is his to make, not me making it for him. And we put yes or no on this board, and he has said no to me. And I'm proud of that no, right? It's really important, again, for us to really know that our kids, whether they have words or not, or speaking or not, do have something to say and have a choice to make. So I laid in bed at night, just thinking, like, did I make that choice for me, or did I make that choice based on him? And I kind of think, am I speaking for him or of him, right? And I think that's the kind of thought process that I try to keep, as even as he gets older. He doesn't understand a lot of the world that's around him, but I want to make sure that I'm not by proxy just speaking for him, but speaking of him.
So we know our kids don't spend all of their time at home. So we do need to think about how we can prepare them to advocate for themselves at school or at a rec program or wherever it is that they're spending the majority of their time. So the first step there is helping the child identify who they feel the most comfortable with. Maybe it's the school librarian, maybe it's the school nurse. Should be someone who's not in a classroom with a group of kids all the time so that they can have easy access to them. And then we need to help our kids understand when they should reach out for help, what they might be feeling. We can even talk them through scenarios. I know that we don't have a crystal ball, so we can't predict every scenario that might come up, but we know our kids and we know what situations they've had in the past. So we can, after the fact, walk them through what we could have done to obtain help. I'm going to tell another story about Tommy here. Last year, he was taking Spanish, which was very challenging for him. Language in general is not something that comes easy to him. And he was taking a test where he had to record himself. And Tommy's speech patterns are what they are. He's autistic. We're not going to change it. And his teacher would hear him pausing and have him restart the test because she thought that he had been pausing for too long. So that really threw him off. He had to restart the tests many times. And he was also at the same time looking at himself on the screen, which he doesn't want to look at anyone's face, let alone his own, while he's trying to concentrate on uh, these words that don't come naturally to him. So after about a half hour of this, he had had enough and he really was about to go into meltdown mode. And he stood up and he walked out of the classroom and he walked to the child study team room and he found his case manager. And he didn't use any words, but she could tell from the way he looked and his body language that something was really wrong. So by the time he pulled himself together, was able to regulate himself, eventually they called me. I went over to the school. We worked it out. And now Tommy was able to, he took the test the next day, but in person with his teacher not recording him. So that was a reasonable accommodation. But he was able to advocate for himself in that situation because he knew who his case manager was and he knew how to get to her office. He knew what he was feeling. It's kind of like a fire drill. When we practice these things in advance, we don't have to stop in the moment to try to figure out what we should be doing.
That's an excellent example. I'll give one again for Marco. So my son Marco loves Elmo's World. I mean, it's his whole life from when he was young till now. And many years ago, he was at the kitchen table watching Elmo, and it was lunchtime, and I was in the kitchen, and I had given him his food, and the battery died on the device, right? And again, with no ability to speak and tell me that it ended, his whole way of communicating to me was to take his dish and throw it across the room. Like, because, how else am I going to tell you, Mom, except for that? I'm like, oh, all right, Elmo must be over. Right here, let me turn it back on or plug it in and I'll get you some more food. What I did was I reinforced, I call it that behavior, but the way he communicated to me is Elmo's done. That means I throw food and that means I get more food and get more Elmo. And until I realized, like, what am I doing? Right. And I needed to set him up to be able to communicate appropriately and set him up for success because shouldn't be throwing that food anywhere and everywhere. Right. So at that point, this was many years ago, I had one of those staples button that said, when you pressed it, it said that was easy. Right. I put that on the table and taught him that instead of the throwing the food, if that happened, he would press that button and say that was easy, right? And now we have a communication device, but we changed what was pretty much an inappropriate or a um, uh, non-effective way of communicating, right? By throwing food to something that was more um, effective. So I was setting him up for success. I was really helping him with an appropriate way to communicate something that he wanted. So I think that's what we need to do is to plan and think that through is how wherever our child is, whatever their needs are, is we really just need to think about what we can do to prepare them so that not only they're successful in their school or their house, but they're able to be successful outside of that in the community and throughout their life. And it's a journey, right? This is not a sprint, it's a journey. We kind of take step by step. You have anything more to add, Elizabeth?
Nope.
Good? Okay.
So when your child turns 14, they will be invited to attend their own IEP meetings. And this is really an excellent opportunity for them to learn how to express themselves. You do want to prepare your child for that meeting, explain it's time to talk about what help they need so that they can learn effectively, so they don't feel like people are speaking negatively about them. And show your child the accommodations available in their IEP, explain them if they need help understanding them, and ask them which of these accommodations really helps you. What do we want to make sure that we keep in there? And then when it comes to the meeting, let them run the meeting. I have to sit on my hands to remind myself to keep my mouth closed in our meetings. But when someone from the team asks a question, look at your child and wait for them to answer. This will signal to the team that you respect what your child says, but it'll also give them a chance to express themselves. And when they're moving beyond school, they'll have practiced in this really nice structured environment how to get those thoughts out. So then they'll be better prepared to voice their opinions in other situations.
I think is very important. And we included my son without being obviously able to speak in his meetings, without making an assumption. I can never make the assumption of what he understands and what he doesn't. I mean, it's important for us again to speak of him and make the best decisions, and we're going to talk about that in the next slide here. But I think it's important for us to always assume competence, assume that independence and interdependence, right, of our kids, that we want to include them, we want them to grow to be as independent or interdependent as they can, whoever they are, as they are, right? But we want to prepare them for that and include them as much as possible. So that not only is in school, that could be at community events, it could be in anything, right? The more that we expose them to different scenarios, different social situations, different any kind of situation, the more that they become familiar with those and the more comfortable they are, and the more they could potentially have a choice whether they or not they want to go, right? We want them to be able to have those voices and choices.
All right, so every parent has something that they struggle with their child. In my house, it has always been our daily routine: getting dressed, getting ready for the day, brushing teeth, brushing hair. My kids always seem to get lost halfway through a task. I'd find myself repeating over and over, did you brush your teeth? Are you wearing socks? Is your homework in your backpack? It's really frustrating for everyone. But we live in a really great time where there's options available to help us with those reminders, so we don't have to be the one repeating ourselves over and over. There's apps, there's calendar reminders, alarms that you can set, even an old school checklist with pictures or words of what they need to complete. Um, then I can say to them, okay, it's time to do your morning tasks, and they can pick up either the iPad with the app on it or the checklist, whichever tool they're using, and then they get to go through it. And I don't have to say over and over, did you remember to do this? It did take us a few times with each kid. The different things work with different kids, to get it right. So if you're trying something like this with your kids, just don't get discouraged if the first solution isn't actually the winner. The other thing that I like to think about is the difference between a have to and a get to. We have to brush our teeth, we have to eat breakfast, we have to pack our backpack, but we get to choose the order that we do our tasks in. It doesn't matter to me if they brush their teeth before they put their shoes on or vice versa, as long as both things get done. Um, we get to choose what we're having for breakfast. I draw the line at leftover Chinese food usually, but we do get to choose, right? They get to choose if they want to wear matching socks or if they want to wear mismatched socks that day. But we can empower our kids to make these decisions, and that will help them feel it's a little bit easier. They won't resist the daily tasks quite so much when they know that they have some choice in the matter. And one other thing that I like to explain to my kids is the difference between a reason and an excuse. Um, a child may have trouble remembering all the different things that they need to put in their backpack every day. And the reason could be that they have trouble with executive functioning skills, but it's not an excuse to leave half of their belongings at home every day. So instead, we could take the reason, which is executive functioning challenges, and find an accommodation like a checklist that will help the child complete the task.
I think that's wonderful.
And
I think about the struggles, the sensory struggles and others that my son has with brushing teeth or even keeping shoes on. There's so many things. Um, he does have his favorite clothes, and I wonder why, right? Are they softer? Or are they, do they, are the socks too tight around his feet? Like shoes come off anywhere, like, those are things. So what does he have to, and what does he get to? He gets to choose which clothes he wants to wear, or which socks he likes. But we have to change him when he is soiled. We have to encourage, teeth brushing in whatever way we can. And very often it is difficult for us, like downright difficult to do the have tos because he doesn't want to, right? And it could be because it's painful maybe, or maybe it's a choice, and I have to make that determination. Is this, why does he not want to do that? Is it because it hurts him? If it hurts him or really uncomfortable, how can I work through those things? If it's sensitization, how can I work through those things? And we've worked with occupational therapists and physical therapists and speech therapists to work through a lot of those things for the have tos, but we definitely celebrate all the get tos, right? Because everybody, and my son particularly, we love, he'll be fully changed and he'll see a laundry basket outside a room, and he goes into that laundry basket and picks out his favorite clothes and puts that on it right on top of what he's wearing, right? Because that was his choice. He wants to wear that, right? So I really appreciate this understanding, this differentiation between the have to and get to, and how that really supports having choices in our lives.
So this one's actually a really hard one for me. Um, but as caregivers, we have to try to remember to be kind to ourselves. And I know we hear a lot about self-care. And sometimes it's easy to tune it out and say, well, I really just don't have time to care for myself. I need to take care of them first. And but just if I could say one thing, just try to remember none of us is perfect. Things won't go as planned all the time. And sometimes we just need to toss our plans out the window and start over. But still be kind to yourself, because every time we try something and it doesn't work, we are one step closer to finding something that will work. And we're also showing our kids that it's okay to make mistakes. They're not perfect, we're not perfect, and we just have to try our best.
And
So,
it's
but be
okay to
kind to
show
yourself.
it's okay to show our kids that we care for ourselves too, right? I think that's for everyone. Um, and bottom line, we have so much to do, right? We have, whether we work or we're home, working at home, whatever it is, our lives are very complex most times when we have children with either disabilities or special health needs or access and functional needs. And we often have big tasks. Like, so my son going to the dentist is a huge task. So it's not just kind of even getting there and working through the whole sensations thing, but it is finding a dentist that's in our insurance, finding a way, because he has to be put under anesthesia to even do a teeth cleaning. Is that covered under my insurance? There is so much to be done for one task, right? And so my lesson learned is to break those tasks into smaller tasks. So it never gets done, him going to the dentist, if I think about it as this huge thing. But what one phone call can I make today, right? Like one part of that. Um, and celebrate that. Like when I get that done, it's a dopamine rush, right? It's like, because I've completed that. Otherwise, I feel like I've never completed anything that I needed to do. So my recommendation were to take some of these really big tasks and give yourself a break and break those down a little and let you set yourself up for success. Whether that's being with caregiving or that's being self-caring, really give yourself, the ability to set yourself up for success. Another thing I recommend is 15 minutes somehow, whether you're in a bathroom or wherever you can do this, find a place and a space that's yours, and particularly outside of the bathroom, I hope, doing something that you love. Um, Finding something. For me, I play online Scrabble, and it's my little thing to do. And I'm on expert mode, and I love winning. And we all hate losing, right? But find that 15 minutes a day that is not this big, huge thing. That's something that you're sure you can do and want to do, that fills you, and that's yours. That's yours to hold and love. That really keeps you going. Another thing is to have a support network, and I know that's very hard to do, but that actually that might take a little work, right? It doesn't come naturally to find these people that you can be yourself and be most vulnerable with. But once you have them, they're there day or night. They want to help. People want to help, and so do the little bit of work and find those people that you can be vulnerable with. Another thing I would suggest is routines. Setting some kind of routine for not only for your child, but for your family and for yourself. We know that goes haywire in a day, right? But if we can structure our lives and our days in some kind of routine that really, don't worry if things go bad, but we really want to try to set a routine as best as we can. Another thing I've been learning to do, as all three of my kids are aging, is to delegate whenever possible. Um, and don't assume that your son or daughter is not able to do some of those tasks around the house, because right now we have taught our son that he cleans up the table after himself, and he vacuums the floor after he finishes eating, and he is folding his laundry, right, and the towels for us, and he puts the toilet rolls in the toilet dispenser, and the paper towel roll goes on the a towel dispenser. These are things we've taught him to do, and that's we've delegated, right? So don't assume that we can't kind of take some of that load off ourselves, because it's okay to ask for help. And it's not about pity, it's about people wanting to help us. So really, that's something I've not learned for a long time, and I really think it's important for us and ourselves and our health. And reflect on your own needs and feelings, and reach out. Please feel free to reach out to others or a professional if you need to. We all need support. We all need to be able to talk through this and get the help that we need. So if you need help, please get it. And our mental health is really important for us to be able to care for others. So I think that's really important for all of us. And I think that's all I have.
So
I'm gonna
I'm gonna stop the recording so that way if anyone has questions or comments, they can go ahead and
That is
ask.
absolutely perfect. Great. So now I would love to open it up. You can share some things in the chat, and